If I was blind, tell me how would you finish this line?
More civil unrest seemed to plague the governments around the world. People took to the streets in protest of everything from rising gas prices to the cost of living. Leaders from around the globe exchanged heated threats, accusing each other of subversion and interference, while the rest of us watched on in worry. Their exchanges were reminiscent of the rantings that led to the last World War. North Korea, Russia, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, South Korea, China, United States, Germany, and the United States increased their military drills in an attempt to parade their newest military arsenal as a silent but obvious show of provocation and bravado. Each dared each other to cross the lines as if they were hoping a war would start between them. It was true, the United States was losing its dominant hold on the petrodollar. More and more countries were choosing to exchange oil for other types of currency like gold, which was outside of the accepted fiat currency each country was peddling. With each country that was willing to exchange outside the US dollar, the more the threats increased between them. Talking heads throughout the news only speculating about what each publication meant. Feverish conspiracy theories went on tirades about pre-planned wars, banking cartels, and secret government agendas being put into play like pieces on a chessboard. Even I had to admit that something was seriously amiss. Every event and civil skirmish was playing out like a poorly written episode from The Twilight Zone. The actors were terrible, and the inability to keep the storyline together was obvious, like some cheesy soap opera. Except this was strangely enough real life, and I, Angela Cage, investigative journalist, was tasked with finding out why. The actors. A slim, dark-haired man in a gray suit with a trim red tie walks into a lobby filled with soft gray couches and young, fresh faces sitting anxiously in them. Tim Bennett? The man says as he looks up from his clipboard. A short guy with short cropped hair jumps up and follows the man out the room. Cameron, a dark-haired, soft blue jeans wearing 19-year-old kid from Detroit, shakes his leg as he anxiously waits. Psst, says a blonde-headed boy in a dark blue fitted blazer. Cameron looks up. Hey, is this your first time? The boy says. Cameron smiles nervously. Yeah, first time, Cameron says. Charlie Mahone, the boy says as he extends his hand towards Cameron. Cameron shakes his hand. Cameron DeVago. Nice to meet you, Cameron. This is a pretty sweet gig. You just can't tell anyone what you do. They prefer people who don't draw a lot of attention to themselves, but the pay is awesome, the boy said, smiling. Yeah, this is like my third time. Not a bad way to earn a living. I mean, you get to go to some sweet places. I just got back from Syria only 2 months ago, he said as he adjusted himself in the seat. Cameron DeVago, the slim man with the gray suit said as he entered the lobby again. Cameron raised his hand and stood up. Good luck. I'll see you around, Charlie said with a wink. Step inside, please, the slim man said as he opened the door to a gray-colored dim-lit room with a single two-way mirror that extended the length of the far wall. Cameron entered the room a bit hesitant but willing. He saw a single person in the corner of the room in silhouette. Please take a seat, said the voice, deep and distorted. The person pointed to a single black chair in front of a medium-sized steel desk with a manila folder. The last time he had seen a desk like this, he had been handcuffed to one. His mind slipped back in time for a moment as he thought about how he had come to this point. It had been 6 months ago that he was spray painting graffiti on some insignificant wall in an alleyway when he was interrupted by a tall, stocky man in a black suit and tie. You have nothing else better to do with your time other than defacing some government building in the middle of the night? The man said, starting the camera mid-spray. The beginning. Who are you? Cameron said as he snatched his black hoodie from his head. Doesn't matter, the man said, taking a step toward him. Cameron looked around with his eyes for an escape path from the alleyway. What's the point if you're not even getting paid for it? the man said as he took another step toward Cameron. Cameron stepped back slightly. His heart raced and thumped in his chest as his breathing became heavier. Just something I like doing, Cameron said as he watched the man closely. Don't worry, I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to offer you a job, the man said as he reached inside his coat pocket. Cameron flinched back as his imagination ran wild. He waited for the sound of a gun, but nothing came. He opened his eyes and saw the man extending a black card toward him. Cameron took it with hesitation. What's this? He said. Like I said, kid, your skills can be useful. Why not get paid for it? The man said as he shifted his weight and turned away from Cameron. Meet me at the address on the card tomorrow if you're interested, he said as he walked away. Cameron was once again left alone in the alleyway. He looked down at the car for a moment and then he saw two figures with flashlights running into the alleyway all of a sudden. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Shouted an officer in a blue and black uniform. Cameron's eyes widened as he turned and ran. He knocked trash cans over as he fled the scene. Halt! Stop! Another officer shouted. Cameron looked back from time to time as the officers were close on his heels. Just as he dashed out the other end of the alleyway, he crashed right into another officer. The officer threw him down onto the ground. They kicked him a few times before throwing him into the back of a patrol car. Afterward, he spent hours waiting in a small interrogation room, handcuffed to a desk. It wasn't until 8 the next morning that he was mysteriously let go with no recourse. He walked out of the police station only to look back for a moment. He slipped his hands to his pocket to protect them from the freezing cold of the early morning. He felt the small card in his pocket, pulled it out, and looked down at the silver address engraved on it. This is how it all began for him. The assignment. His mind quickly returned from how he was 6 months ago versus to what he was now in the present. Cameron sat down and stared down at the manila folder and then back toward the figure in silhouette. Cameron could tell that the voice of the person was distorted on purpose because no man would have a voice that sounded like that. After a few minutes, he looked up from the folder to the figure. This is my assignment, Cameron said a bit hesitantly. Yes, said the figure. You will be given instructions once you arrive. Remember your training. How could he forget his training, he thought. He had endured 6 months of torture, starvation, hand-to-hand combat, and weapons training of all kinds. They were never satisfied that he was ready until he was nearly beaten unconscious for refusing to provide intel during a training exercise. He sat in a chair for 4 hours wallowing in his own piss and fluids, bloody from head to toe. Give us all the information you have. What is your name? Who do you work for? What was your objective? They said as they smacked him around for hours. Cameron didn't say a word. As the room contorted and his vision blurred, they gripped him by the jaw and looked at his bloody nose. He's not going to say anything, one of the instructors said. Another instructor stepped up to Cameron and snapped his fingers. Hey, if you give us what we're looking for, you can finally get out of this piss you've been sitting in for the past few days. You'll even get something good to eat, he said, grinning. What you say? You must be thirsty, he said, grinning more. Cameron's head lolled about on his neck until he finally steadied it. His eyes settled on the sandy-haired instructor with the military buzz cut in front of him. Cameron smiled. Not gonna happen. But you can go get yourself a shot of Jack if you're thirsty, he said and cackled maniacally. The instructor smiled and patted Cameron on his cheek. Good boy, he's ready, he said, smiling as he stepped away from a bloody, laughing Cameron. Cameron's mind returned to the figure in the room. He laid the folder on the desk and stood up with purpose, shoulders square, eyes dark, and jaw tight. He nodded for a moment and then turned and walked out of the room. All that was left was the silhouette of the person, the desk, and the folder with the picture of the Venezuelan flag hanging partially out of it. The investors. Hey, Patrick, said Gary Port, 56, gray, smart business suit. As he entered into the room, Patrick Bandicoot, 33, tall, slim, quick-witted, and the youngest successful investment banker for Laurel and Tate Prestige Bank, looked up from his computer with eyes of steel. There was intelligence and determination behind those eyes. He had every intention of being the youngest associate to be made partner in the history of the firm. There was no doubt his ambition was the fuel that drove him. If ambition had a body, it would have been him. They are ready for you. The meeting will start soon, Gary said, smiling. Thank you, Gary, he said. Patrick stood up from his desk, straightened his suit, and walked up to Gary. You nervous? Gary said, grinning. Not in the least. I have been waiting for this moment for a long time, Patrick said confidently. Each man nodded one to another and walked down the hall and entered the room with the big, beautiful artisan carved wood door. Patrick Ulysses Bandicoot. It is very nice to finally meet you. We have heard so many great things about you, a portly man in a black suit and tie said from the head of a long ebony rectangular table. The sound of a click echoed the room, and a large screen behind his head came to life with charts and bar graphs. All of your investments have doubled and even tripled. Our investors are happy and our pockets have fattened thanks to your efforts that have not gone unnoticed. The smirking as the eyes of the other associates sealed. We understand that you have been seeking a partner position. Is that correct? He said. Patrick smiled and looked around the room. Yes, I want to be the one to take this company even further than it has already gone. I believe you need someone as young and as ambitious as you were when you started here. I will give my absolute best if given the opportunity, Patrick said, sure of himself. Seems like he is just the type we have been looking for, August, said a much older associate with a shaved head sitting at the right hand of August Chamberlain, the head of chair of Laurel and Tate. Seems so, August said, looking at Patrick. Gary, thank you for showing Patrick the way. Leave us. We have much to discuss with him, August said, leaning into his chair. Gary nodded and left the room, closing the door behind him. Please take a seat, Patrick, August said, pointing to an empty seat to the left of him. Patrick watched as the two men in black suits stepped toward the entrance of the door and locked it. They both had closely shaved heads with white earpieces in each ear. Their expressions were emotionless. The room's light slowly turned down. As you all know, a new president of Venezuela has been chosen, August said as he clicked the picture of the newly appointed Venezuelan president smiling behind his inauguration podium. As you know, Venezuela is a very powerful, very important country to the whole world besides the countries in the Middle East. We need to keep keeping very close tabs on them. More importantly, we must keep in mind that they are one of the founding members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting, commonly known as OPEC, August said as he clicked his small remote. What they do influences the world because OPEC countries determine worldwide gas prices, he said gruffly. A picture of Vladimir Putin with the Russian flag behind him popped up on the screen. We have noticed that Russia is taking a special interest in this country, and our sources say that the Venezuelan incumbent has agreed to exchange oil for currency other than the US dollar. This concerns us for obvious reasons. If our investors even sense that their dollars could be in danger, we will begin to see a huge sell-off of investment capital, which could mean a gigantic loss in profits, August said as the display powered off and the lights came up. The manipulators. So what can we do? We knew this would eventually happen. Some of my friends at the Federal Reserve has told me that the United States can barely keep up with its loan repayment. They owe everyone, including China, said Murphy Strauss with a deep Texan accent. He was 66 years old, an oil tycoon and partner of the company. Everyone sees the writing on the wall except the American public. The best thing we can do is play both sides and make money either way, Murphy said. Charles Tuck, 45, then removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. So what are we proposing here? Are we just going to let this collapse happen, he said. Murphy chuckled. You can't help a drowned cat who doesn't realize that he is drowning. Charles placed his glasses back on his face and looked over at Murphy. War could be just what is needed to rebound, August said. It has always been that a strong, failing country for them to quickly rebound. Many of these countries will come to various banks for funding. They will also come to look for investment opportunities as they seek to expand. He who owns a promissory note holds the man. The same goes for countries. The more they borrow, the more of their foreign lands they have to put up for collateral. We, in this sense, buy up the land, buy the promissory note, and even if they fail, it is our gain. If they lose, we get the land and its resources. If they win, we get the interest gained in their investment accounts. Either way, we make money, August said as he chuckled. Patrick kept his composure as he watched these men at the table discuss how they were going to benefit from some omniscient event of the future. He was stoned on the outside, but a huge part of him felt uncomfortable as he listened to them discuss the strategy as if they were playing pieces on a chessboard. He knew the game would be different at the higher echelon, but not like this. This was true power at the governmental level. He was used to playing these games with companies, but with nations, this was something entirely different. The best thing we can do is control which way the needle tips. Currently, Venezuela's incumbent is open to trading with a few currencies, but more importantly with gold. Venezuela has a huge caches of gold and oil. They are mineral rich and very wealthy, and they owe no one. If they wanted to change who they traded with, they could easily do so, and the other OPEC nations would soon follow suit, Murphy said matter-of-factly. John Hermes, 52, short, gray hair, slight hunch, spoke up. If the incumbent does what he has promised, the US dollar will no longer be the world trade currency for petrol, and the United States economy will fail, especially if gold becomes a trade standard. We all will lose. Distraction is the best thing that could happen. If everyone is too busy bickering over other things, it will give us more time to prepare. I agree with Murphy. It is inevitable. All kingdoms must fall. But we, like the phoenix, must be able to rise out of the ashes and start new with us at the head of it, John said with his eyes of steel. Yes, a distraction is what is needed, Seth. Why don't you call a few of your friends and let the current leadership know that their place in the world is about to change if the incumbent Venezuelan president has his way? Sydney, get a few of your friends from the press to assist. Give the piranhas something to gnaw on for a while, John said as he pointed to each of his colleagues. This is going to take a coordinated effort from all of us and our friends to ensure an outcome we can all benefit from, he said, now leaning back in his chair with a stiff red neck. Patrick felt the blood leave his face. His necktie all of a sudden felt too tight. He could not believe his ears. They were planning the fall and rise of governments. Each man lent a suggestion on how to use the media to peddle the story in a favorable direction. Each man at the table was tasked to pool their resources and contacts and use their influence to control the narrative and to move money in favor of those that favored their agenda. In that moment, he realized that he had delved into a world he had not known even existed amongst investors and bankers. The deal. Patrick quickly realized that these men and their friends were the true source of power. The meeting adjourned and the men filed out of the room. Patrick, I would like for you to meet me in my office in a few minutes, August said as Patrick was leaving, feeling a bit sick. Patrick nodded and walked toward August's office. At the end of the hall, busy workers power walked past him, smiling from ear to ear. In recognition of him, he nodded and entered into August's office. August's office was spacious, with wide panel glass from the floor base to the ceiling. It offered him a spectacular view of the city. Pictures of him standing next to presidents, senators, royal family members, men and women of power from around the world hung on the walls like monuments to his influence. They were standing close to each other, smiling and shaking hands. He had a modern black desk with small, elegant lamps that lit the room up, along with natural light flooding through the long paneled windows and skylight. Small green plants on center stands accented various corners of his office. There was what looked to be smaller space behind another wall that had a mini shower with glass doors. A tall coat rack sat next to it. Patrick heard a slight chuckle from behind him. You like my office? August said as he sat a manila folder on his desk. Patrick turned to face August and smiled. It pays to be a partner and the president. The perks unrivaled, August said as he pointed to the view he had of the city. Now that you are a partner and the youngest the company has ever had, you will begin to see and experience the benefits and responsibilities of this position, August said as he took a seat behind his desk. Please sit, he said, pointing to the cushioned chair in front of his desk. This position also requires discretion because you will be privy to some sensitive information in regards to what our primary function is. You will hear sensitive information which you will not share with anyone according to our privacy rules and bylaws. Your responsibility as a partner is to protect the interests of the company and its investors. Please read the contract sitting on my desk thoroughly and sign in all places outlined by the red tabs, August said as he stood up and walked toward his glass minibar. A slight tap came to the door. Come in, August bellowed through sips of brown rum. Ely Perez, 48, balding, dark gray suit, short with glasses, entered the room. You called for me? Perez said. Oh yes, August said, as he walked back toward his desk and grabbed the manila folder. Then August grabbed a packing envelope and slid the folder inside and sealed it. Get this to Opry. Tell them that we would like this matter handled as soon as possible. Tell them all the investors have agreed, August said as he handed Perez the packing envelope. Perez nodded and took the envelope and left. Patrick signed the last page and slowly put the pen down. Even as he finished the last curl of cursive on his signing, he felt like he was signing away a piece of himself. In that moment, he doubted everything, and even himself for the first time in his life. Ah, finally done, August said, stepping next to Patrick and took the document. Welcome, partner. Let me show you your new office, August said, extending his hand. Patrick took August's hand and stood up. August patted Patrick on the back and walked him close to the window. Yellow cabs, trucks, and honking horns, and busy bodies teemed like ants below. You will quickly learn, Patrick, that the true seats of power are above, not below. No matter what happens in this world, we at the top will always be okay. We never fall unless we choose to, August said, sure of himself and proud. Patrick finally gave his logic a voice. If we are always on top, how do you explain what happened in the 1920s? Patrick said, a bit apprehensive about what exactly he signed up for. This was surely not the partnership he thought he would be getting. Maybe he misunderstood what company partners did. August laughed. You have a lot to learn, Patrick. Not everyone can handle what we do to stay on top. Some people's guilt will have them leaping from buildings when it comes time to put actions to words. I have a feeling that you are much stronger than that, August said as his eyes rested upon Patrick. We chose you because you are strong and ambitious. We are more scrutinizing of our members now than we were back then. There is no place for weak men amongst the top. We do what needs to be done to keep the balance. Presidents don't run the country, the banks do, August said as he looked out into the streets like a god standing on Mount Olympus. Patrick turned and observed August's arrogance and pomp as he manifested in his body. He guessed that men at that level had to have a certain amount of confidence to exist there. Don't worry, Patrick. You will understand soon enough how the world really works. You will be amongst the few who do. The rest are just pieces on the board we get to play with as we please, August said, smiling down at an unknowing, completely blind public. Patrick turned and looked down too. Women in power suits pushed baby carriages down the streets, while hot dog vendors exchanged cash for goods. Men in delivery trucks struggled with their wares on carts as people walked down the street with cell phones to their ears, completely oblivious, completely distracted.